Good evening. I am the Maven of the Eventide, and welcome back to my library. Yes, my library full of vampire books and other things that are dark and macabre in nature. Yes, it's time to get reading. Spookily. Some new vampire books arrived recently at my P.O. box. Yes, my dark and spooky P.O. box at that terrifying place known as the post office. I collect vampire books because, well, frankly, I have a problem. But also, in order to read them for our vampire book club. Every month we read one vampire book for our vampire book club from my vampire library. I have over 400 books in my vampire library, and we will read them all eventually. One day. I can keep doing this show until I'm in my 90s, right? Elvira's 70 and she's still going. I now finally have a copy of the Vampire Diaries by L.J. Smith. You may be familiar with them due to the hugely popular television show based on the books. People ask me to review that television show all the time, and my answer to you is, I have not watched it. It was a bit after my time as far as like teenage romance TV shows went, so in order to review it, I would have to watch the entire thing, and then like the follow-up shows, and it would just be a big commitment. We'll get to it one of these days, but first step is reading the books. This is The Vampire Diaries, The Awakening and the Struggle, and this is The Vampire Diaries, The Fury and Dark Reunion. And this series started in 1991. It is a classic of vampire children's literature from the years before young adult even existed as a subcategory in the publishing industry, when it was either just children's or adults. This was children's horror, 1991. But what's it all about, you ask? Well, a deadly love triangle. As you do. It knows what the people want. Elena, the golden girl, the leader, the one who can have any boy she wants. Stefan, brooding and mysterious. He seems to be the only one who can resist Elena, even as he struggles to protect her from the horrors that haunt his past. Damon, sexy, dangerous, and driven by an urge for revenge against Stefan, the brother who betrayed him. Determined to have Elena, he'd kill to possess her. Collected here in one volume for the first time, volumes 1 and 2 of The Vampire Diaries, the tale of two vampire brothers and the beautiful girl torn between them. So this collected edition came out in 2008. It's the first two books and the second two books, and these are the complete Vampire Diaries of the series as it existed. I always thought it was a much longer series, but according to this, it's just the 4 books, which I have now in 2 volumes, so yeah, easy to catch up on. I should probably get on that. Now, having had no familiarity with this series at all, other than knowing it was young adult full of like hot, beautiful teenagers being pretty, hearing that the girl character who's caught between the two sexy vampires and her, dark and deadly love triangle, hearing that she's not like the wilting wallflower, nobody loves me, I'm just a klutz kind of character, that she's like a strong, empowered, confident female character, makes it more interesting to me. It's different, and that's interesting because this was from 1991, so it predates that whole trope of the like Bella Swan blank slate character. She actually has a strong personality, and I'm interested to see how these like very cliche vampire love triangles went from this to what we got in the late 2000s. Speaking of vampire romances, young adult love triangle stories, now we have The Righteous by Renee Adia, which is the 3rd book in the Beautiful series. According to this, it's a quartet. The 4th one isn't out yet. I talked to you previously about The Beautiful and The Damned, and we have read both these books for the Vampire Book Club. So if you want very detailed summaries and analyses and my thoughts and feelings about these books, you can watch those Vampire Book Club videos and find out about it. And now I have the 3rd installment, The Righteous. This series is set in Victorian-ish era New Orleans. Because it is old-timey New Orleans, vampires and secret societies and stuff, it does get compared to Anne Rice a lot. I got very zero Anne Rice vibes from this book other than New Orleans itself. being a vibe, which it isn't. Very different style, very different writing. Young adult, but they do have beautiful covers. And the main character is a dressmaker. That's why we have a dress on the cover. That is a gorgeous dress. I would wear that dress. And I just love the way these books are styled. This one has a green New Orleans map inside. The first one is red. The second one is purple. Just beautiful books. Vampire werewolf rivalry books, for those of you who are a fan of that genre. Technically young adult, even though it's about grown-up people doing grown-up things. You know, they're young, but when you were that age, back then, you were basically an adult. But, you know, written for children. This was actually the first sequel that we read for any of our books in Vampire Book Club, and that's what the book club voted to read. So maybe the book club will vote to read the threequel soon. This is The Lost Girls. Speaking of Vampire Book Club, even though I received this very recently, the Vampire Book Club voted on it, so we actually already read it and already talked about it in the Vampire Book Club, The Lost Girls. This was sent to my P.O. Box, but I've been hearing a lot of buzz about it. It just came out last year. It got a lot of buzz. It is about a teenage vampire who was made in the 1980s. So she's like forever 80s fabulous, which is part of The Lost Girls, which is a homage to The Lost Boys, a very popular 80s vampire film. Otherwise, there is not much in common with The Lost Boys at all, story-wise. It's not even set in the 80s, it's set in modern times. Anyway, this vampire who was made in the 80s, this lost girl, was abandoned by her very abusive vampire boyfriend, who was also her vampire sire. And she teams up with the other girlfriends that he's abandoned over the years because they decide they want to kill him because it's the only way they can be free of his horrible abusiveness. So they plot to kill him and save his next target in the process. And if you want to hear all my thoughts and feelings about that, check out the Vampire Book Club video, and you can see that because we just did that a few days ago. And speaking of the Vampire Book Club, which is free and public and anyone can join, you can just sign up on my Discord server, come and join, or don't even join, just watch the videos, find out what we think and feel about vampire books. We are reading this month, finally, the Morganville Vampire series. We're reading the first book in the series, which is Glass Houses, and you still have time. You could still join us and read Glass Houses, or if you've read it before, because this is an older book and a lot of people grew up with this book, you can come join the book club and find out what the rest of us think about it. It will be my first time reading it, so here's to see what we think about the Morganville Vampires. This series was recommended to me by Juliet Landau, because she said it was one of her favorite vampire series, and I'm very curious about it. The link to my Discord server is in the description of this video and in all the descriptions of my videos, and it is a public server. Anyone can join. Come and join and talk about vampires with us. This is something I've been very excited about. This is Garlic and the Vampire, which is a graphic novel. It's a middle grade book for ages 8 to 12 by Bree Paulson, who is a very fabulous artist who I've talked to you about before. She is the artist who does the Patrick the Vampire webcomic. See, we have a little anthropomorphized Garlic who has a stake and a mallet. Garlic is a vampire slayer. Garlic feels as though she's always doing the wrong thing. No matter how much her friend Carrot and kindly Witch Agnes encourage her, Garlic just wants to tend her own garden, where it's nice and safe, and live in her small village with the rest of the vegetable people. But when the village of vegetable people learns that a bloodthirsty vampire may have moved into the nearby castle, they all agree that, despite her fear and self-doubt, Garlic is the obvious choice to confront him. And, with everyone counting on her, Garlic reluctantly agrees to face the mysterious vampire. With humor, heart, and an unusual heroine with more courage than she realizes, Bree Paulson's debut graphic novel is a farm-fresh tale that reminds readers to believe in themselves, and that strangers are not always as scary as they might seem. And I had the honor of meeting Bree Paulson in person, and she signed it for me. She drew a little garlic there. Isn't that so cute? Thank you. She also gave me some swag. She does some really beautiful, just like botanary drawings. You should follow her on Twitter and see her art and a Patrick the Vampire sticker. So excited for this book. And there's a sequel coming. She's been working on the sequel too, so we can look forward to that. Now, this is something I've been wanting for a long time. This is The Vampire Countess by Paul Faval, the French author who you would know as the author of Vampire City, his more famous book. Vampire City is a very weird take on vampires, and these copies are adapted by Brian Stableford. They're the only copies you can buy of this author's vampire works in English. But in France, in oldie times, I'm talking pre-Dracula. Yeah, 1855, so like way before Dracula came out. He was the guy who wrote vampire fiction. And some of you may not know this about me, but besides loving vampires, I am also quite fond of a little story called Phantom of the Opera. And in The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, we see that the Phantom he pretends to be a ghost in the opera house, right? But he's really just a guy. But he has a box at the opera, box 5, which must be left empty for him. And no one else is allowed to sit at this box. And when they go to the box to try to investigate who the Phantom is he a ghost? Is he like a charlatan? Yes, he's a charlatan. They find that he has left behind a copy of a book called The Vampire that he's been reading. And, when I read this in Phantom of the Opera, I'm like, oh, the Phantom's reading a book called The Vampire. And I'm trying desperately to figure out what this book is. So I'm doing my research, trying to find books that the Phantom of the Opera could have been reading in France in 1881, books that would be in French, so probably originally written in French, called The Vampire. And I can't find it anywhere, so I'm like, oh, did Gaston Leroux just make this book up for the Phantom to read? Why would the Phantom be reading this book? Was it a real book that's like slid into obscurity? Finally, I figure it out. It was The Vampire Countess that Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, was reading. It's been changed to The Vampire Countess in English, but in the original edition, it was just called The Vampire. So he would have been reading it in French in the original edition. And I'm like, why would the Phantom of the Opera be reading this book? Is it thematically connected to the Phantom of the Opera? Well, now I can read it and find out and read the same books the Phantom reads because I love him. One of the wonderful people on my Discord server has already read this and was telling me some pretty bonkers things about it. Yet Paul Faval, weird guy, weird ideas of vampires. These vampires are not like other vampires, so I'm very excited to read it, but also, a little bit wary. We'll see what it's about. I'd love to read these books for the Vampire Book Club, but these are the only English editions you can get, and they are not cheap. They're about $20 each. This one's $19.95. This one's $22.95. And, I don't like to make my book club have to spend a lot of money. Usually I try to pick books that they can get at their library or find used easily somewhere. So this would be a bit of a bigger ask for the book club. But we will read all the vampire books in the vampire libraries. So one day. This is The Stolen of Law Unto Herself by Jennifer L. Barnes. And this book was sent to me by Jennifer L. Barnes, who autographed it for me. I bid you good evening and thank you for everything. Oh. And Jennifer just published this book last year in 2021. New book, very exciting. Her name is Forrest, but she is better known as Law Unto Herself, a vampire vigilante who is too moral for her own good and too stubborn to know when to quit. Armed with a .44 automag, a bitching pony car, martial arts skills that would make an MMA prizefighter blush, and a love for heavy metal, Forrest fights against the forces of evil. When a member of the Vampire Council contacts Forrest to investigate a series of disappearances in their ranks, she thinks it's just another job that they can't afford to get their hands dirty with. After a fairy maiden goes missing after meeting up with some unsavory company gains the attention of Lady Win Umbra, Forrest's oldest friend, to investigate, she turns to the vampire for aid. The two quickly realize that the cases of the missing vampires and fairy are related when they discover a supernatural slavery ring. When the slavers set their eyes on Windsun and Forrest's godson, both fairy and vampire find themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. However, these slavers will find out that Law Unto Herself didn't get her title for demurely backing down and submitting to someone else's will. Sounds like a very badass urban fantasy. If that's your genre, this will fit that to a T. She also sent me sticker sheets of characters from the book. I got like several of them, which I could use as a bookmark or stick on things. Those are so pretty. We got Forrest the vampire, Win the fairy, Gabriel, who also looks like a fairy because he has pointy ears, and Hawk. I don't know, he could be human, he could be a vampire. We'll find out. And there's a Facebook page, facebook.com/Law Unto Herself, if you're curious and want to learn more. This is Shadow City by Anna Mulsicat, and just by the cover, I'm going to guess another urban fantasy. A place where villains become heroes, and heroes are not what they seem. There is no light. There is no dark. Only shadows. Oh, it's apocalyptic fiction. Los Angeles is an apocalyptic wasteland. The few survivors of a horrific catastrophe live under the constant threat of radiation, mutated creatures, and worse, lurking in the shadows. The nuclear disaster has shifted realities as we knew them and brought something into our world which threatens to exterminate the human race. Something so vicious that every living being is horrified of it. Something that feeds on suffering and violence. But humans aren't alone in their struggle for survival. Unexpected allies emerge from the shadows, and in the final stand, a nameless stranger will decide humanity's fate. I wonder if the vampires are the horror that feeds on suffering and violence, or if the vampires are the unexpected allies. I wonder. This book came out in 2019, so it was fairly recent, but this was a used copy that someone found and sent to me. Thank you very much. Cycle of a Rat, a vampire novel by Carl D. Smith. New York City. Cable TV is a luxury. Hip-hop is in its infancy. Reagan is not yet president. The city lives in desperation. Okay, so it sounds like an alternate history. And in the subterranean remains of the American dream sleeps an ancient evil, waiting to continue his murder of the human race. Enter the Spiders, a small street gang constantly pressed by their rivals, the ever-growing pharaohs. The Spiders investigate a tip, which may lead to their biggest score, and everything they need to take out the pharaohs. The location? An abandoned military warehouse built over a condemned subway tunnel. The loot? A living weapon that feeds on chaos and death, which might be held in check by Dawson, a young spider with a special gift he's just discovering. Alternate history, urban fantasy. Very interesting. I like this book formatting. It's got black around all the pages. This came out in 2020, also fairly recent. Oh, it's got a cool illustration. Cycle of a Rat is an expanded version of the comic book Smell of a Rat, first created by Carl D. Smith and Stan Chow. Visit stanchow.com for more of his work. So there was a comic book called Smell of the Rat that they then expanded into a full novel. Very cool. 12 by Jasper Kent, Russia 1812. It began as a last stand against Napoleon's invading army. It would end as a fight against an enemy of mankind itself. I'm assuming the enemy is vampires? Another alternate history vampire novel. Very cool. This came out in 2010, so it's been around for a while, but I have never heard of it before. I'm curious. The Vordelak, a creature of legend. Vordelak. There was a famous vampire story a long time ago called The Family of Vordelak, so yeah, vampire connection. A creature of legend, the tales of which have terrified Russian children for generations. But for Captain Alexei Ivanovich Danilov, a child of more enlightened times, it is a legend that has long been forgotten. Besides, in the autumn of 1812, he faces a more tangible enemy, the Grand Army of Napoleon Bonaparte. Interesting to be reading about a war involving Russia in which Russia is the victim of Napoleon in this day and age. City after city has fallen to the advancing French, and it now seems that only a miracle will keep them from Moscow itself. In desperation, Alexei and his comrades enlist the help of the Oprichniki, a group of 12 mercenaries from the furthest reaches of Christian Europe. Oh, so that's the 12. I thought the 12 was 1812, but no, it's the 12 mercenaries, who claim that they can turn the tide of the war. It seems an idle boast, but the Russians soon discover that the Oprichniki are indeed quite capable of fulfilling their promise, and much more. Unnerved by the fact that so few can accomplish so much, Alexei remembers those childhood stories of the Vordelak, and as he comes to understand the true horrific nature of these 12 strangers, he wonders at the nightmare they've unleashed in their midst. Full of historical detail, thrilling action, and heart-stopping supernatural moments, 12 is a storytelling at its most original and exciting. The London Times says it's an accomplished, entertaining blend of historical fiction and dark fantasy. I love historical vampires, even if they are spending their immortality fighting a war. So many better things to do. Someone's got to stop Napoleon. Here we have some more Warhammer. Adding to my Warhammer collection. What do we have this time? We have A Darkness in the Blood by Guy Haley. The galaxy in flames, chaos in the ascendant across the stars. The Great Rift has split the holdings of the Imperium in twain, isolating entire sectors from the light of Holy Terra. But all hope is not lost. The Primarch Roybug Gilliman has returned from deathless sleep and appointed Commander Dante, Lord of the Blood Angels, as regent and warden of the newly dubbed Imperium Nihilis. In the Baal system, the shattered holding of the chapter is being rebuilt, and Dante plans the greatest campaign of his long life, to retake half an empire. And yet, at this moment of rebirth, there are dangers close to home that could overwhelm all those who carry the blood of Sanguinius in their veins, stopping Dante's noble endeavor before it began. The flaw in Sanguinius's sons is growing. As the twin curses of the Red Thirst and the Black Rage threaten everything, the hardest ordeal will fall upon Misphaton, twice-born Lord of Death and Chief Librarian of the Blood Angels. Oh, that's a good title, Lord of Death and Chief Librarian. Sounds good to me. Among the mighty lords of Baal, perhaps only he can save them all by mastering the darkness and the blood. It's nice that this Warhammer book summary actually gives me more of a sense of character and what's going on. It's a little more intriguing than the other Warhammer book summaries I read before. In this book, The Sons of Sanguinius, a Blood Angels Omnibus, has three novels, Flesh Terrors, Death of Integrity, and Lamartes, as well as 2 novellas and a number of short stories. So we get a lot more of the Sons of Sanguinius who are vampire-like, or maybe it's the Blood Angels that are vampires. I don't remember which. It's one of the two. My Warhammer collection. Is my Warhammer Vampire collection complete now? Do I have it all, or is there more to come? I also have to figure out which one I should read first out of all these Warhammer 4000 Vampire books so that I can put that book up for vote for the Vampire Book Club, because I think it's about time we actually started tackling these. Also, I have a beautiful hardback copy of the Codex Adeptus Astartes of the Blood Angels. I was about to say that it's illustrated, but these actually look like photographs of minis. That's cool. And then a bunch of illustrations as well. Everything you need to know. This is a very pretty book. You will need a copy of the Warhammer 40,000 rules in order to use the contents of this book. FYI. Daemon, Volume 1, the comic. Daemon is a cool, organized, crime-tinged take on the enduringly popular vampire genre, says Comics Alliance. For thousands of years, the world has been controlled by the 50 Families, a secret network of vampire covens engaged in a timeless struggle for power. But when the sun rises, the vampires are forced to employ the services of a human who acts as their daytime fixer and protector. Trained for centuries to be the mortal soldier for the vampire employers, the daemon go forth at sunrise, alone to the world to do the bidding of their sleeping benefactors. So this is a book about the human servants of vampires. They're daemon. Interesting. See it from the other point of view. Full color comic, very pretty. Volume 1, I don't know of how many. And this came out in 2014, so it's been around for a while. This is my first time hearing about it, so thank you for introducing me to all these new vampire things. This I'm very excited about. This is a copy of Mad Magazine from May 1995. It has an interview with the vampire section in it. You know that Interview with the Vampire is my favorite, so it is a parody comic called Intravenous with the Vampire, where it just sort of makes fun of the entire movie starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. And the person who wrote this comic clearly did not like the movie very much, did not think very highly of it, didn't think very highly of vampires, so, take it for what it is, but it is cute, and the art is actually pretty cool. Actually looks really good. Even if they are saying horrible things about my favorite movie. This is Death's Disciples by Dustin L. Harriman, and I don't know if this one has vampires in it or if it's just a generally spooky book, but it's got the Grim Reaper on the cover, so I love it. Anything with the Grim Reaper on the cover is right by me. This came out in 2021, another new book. A young man named Zakul from a long misunderstood tribe leaves his home to attend a festival in the town of Dasum, when the town comes under siege by an invading army. Follow along as this unlikely survivor relates his harrowing experience and live his desperate attempts to cling to life and safety. And this says about the author that he is a D&D nerd, an avid reader, and video game enthusiast. So this definitely sounds like a D&D style epic fantasy story about this character who's clearly not human. He is of a race of peoples. And he's about to shake hands with death, and I'm excited about that. I don't know if it has vampires in it, but anything that's spooky is up my alley. Thank you for sending this to me. This absolutely does have vampires in it, but it's not a book. This is a movie collection. It's called The Undead, the Vampire Collection. It contains 20 classic vampire movies. some of which I have seen already and some of which I never have and have always wanted a copy of. This collection was released in 2010. This is DVD, back in the pre-Blu-ray days. And it has Adam Age Vampire, black and white from 1960. The Bat, black and white silent film from 1926. The Bat, black and white non-silent film from 1959. Blood of Dracula's Castle, color movie from 1969. The Bloody Vampire, black and white from 1962. Count Dracula and His Vampire Bride, color movie from 1974. Crypt of the Living Dead, color movie from 1973. The Devil Bat, black and white from 1941. So we have two bats and a devil bat. Horrible Sexy Vampire, color movie from 1970. What is Horrible Sexy Vampire? Some kind of sadist, but not human, is murdering people. A doctor is convinced that the killings are the evil workings of a reclusive old baron who died many years ago. But I guess he's horrible and sexy. Heck yeah. Horror Express, color movie from 1972. The Last Man on Earth, black and white from 1960. That is the Vincent Price movie that is based on the book I Am Legend, which has been remade a couple times. You may know the Will Smith movie of I Am Legend, but The Last Man on Earth, classic film. Nightmare Castle, black and white movie from 1965. Nosferatu, the classic silent black and white movie from 1922, which we have discussed plenty of times here before. Prime Evil, color movie from 1988. Terror, Creatures from the Grave, black and white movie from 1965. The Vampire Bat, black and white movie from 1933. So we have two bats, the Vampire Bat and the Devil Bat. Yes. Vampire Happening, color movie from 1971. Vampire's Night Orgy, color movie from 1973. The Werewolf versus Vampire Women, color movie from 1971. A werewolf is brought back to life and heads off to the countryside in search of a safe haven and also prey. And I guess, some vampire women find him. Well. And The Witch's Mountain, color movie from 1972. Yeah, I think the only movies I've seen from this before are Last Man on Earth and Nosferatu. I have not seen any of these other movies. So vampire watch party, old classic, black and white, and, newer color movies. The newest one seems to be 1988. And technically not a vampire, but of course I had to have it. This is Elvira's autobiography, memoirs. Yours Cruelly, Elvira, Memoirs of the Mistress of the Dark. And this came out last fall. It took me a while to get a copy, and I'm very happy to have it. The big news about Elvira's autobiography is that in it, she came out as queer. She revealed that she has been in a relationship with a woman for many years now, and she said that she never wanted to tell people that she was gay or bi or whatever she is, because she was afraid people would stop finding her sexy. Like the men who objectify her in her shows as the Elvira character, which is like this horn dog character for men, they would watch Elvira and then be like, she doesn't like men that way. Which I don't know if she does, maybe she's both, but she was afraid people would think that. And she didn't want to reveal that, so she kept her sexuality a secret all these years. She's finally out. You know what? She's 70 years old now. Let her live her best dream. I am so happy to have a copy of this book, a physical copy, because I am going to meet her, Cassandra Peterson, the mind behind Elvira, in a couple months. I'm going on a trip to Romania in Transylvania, and I'm going to tour Dracula's castle. So I know I'm so excited, but she is hosting this trip, and she's going to be there a few of the days, and I'm going to get to see a movie screening of her movie with her, and she's going to join us who are on this trip for dinner, and I'm finally going to meet her. So I'm going to take this book with me and ask her to autograph it if that's a thing that she's willing to do. I also like my copies of her movies. Elvira is my hero. She's always been ever since I was a little girl. I have styled a lot of aspects of myself in the show that you are watching after Elvira, especially her rampant feminism and empowerment, which I've always admired. And also, of course, the cleavage. And speaking of Elvira, I received this Elvira Funko Pop in her sparkly red dress to go with my other Elvira Funko Pop. Well, I have two. I have Elvira sitting in her lounge chair and then the teeny tiny Elvira that came in the Funko Pop cereal. So now I have 3 Elvira Funkos. Thank you. She's so sexy. She's holding a heart that she presumably ripped out of someone's chest and is about to eat. Because, I would. It's the 40 years Elvira Funko. Yeah, to coincide with the release of her book, there was a lot of new Elvira merch. There was Halloween merch, Christmas merch, and Valentine's merch, which is all come and gone since this book came out and I made this video. I'm looking forward to more Elvira opportunities. She was doing an auction where she was auctioning off like her old costume pieces and stuff. Very exciting. You can own a piece of Elvira in your life. But I'm actually going to get to meet her, and I'm very excited. And I will tell you all about my entire trip to Romania and Transylvania and going to Dracula Land, because, you know, that's the real reason I'm going there. Elvira is a perk. This is an apron that my friend Lindsay Ellis made for me with her own hands and gave me for Christmas. Look at this apron. It's like to wear while I'm cooking all those spooky meals I cook. It's got like gothic haunted bats and trees at the top, and then at the bottom, gothic trees. In the pocket is a heart, but with really gothic lace. It's so pretty. My friend is so talented to make this for me for Christmas. I almost don't want to wear it while I cook because it'll get like food all over it, and it's so pretty. You may have also noticed my very cool Haunted Mansion, Disney's Haunted Mansion gargoyle necklace. Got a lot of cool Haunted Mansion stuff. I love Haunted Mansion. It's the one thing at Disney that's like made for me. Whenever I go to Disney, which is, you know, like once every 10 years or whatever, I always have to go to the Haunted Mansion. Also, as part of my Haunted Mansion post-Christmas gifts, I got the key to the Haunted Mansion, which came in a beautiful velvet bag. You can see we have our ghosts here. This is a thing that Disney is doing now, apparently, making keys to their rides. Came with a little story. In the mists of time, as Disneyland was born, a set of keys were forged. Under the veil of secrecy, these keys were placed in the hands of a guardian, sworn to uphold and protect the traditions of wonder and magic. Evidence of the guardian was right before our eyes, as symbols on the key appeared, though we did not recognize their meaning. As we uncover the mystery of the keys, we realize that their production has never ceased, and that need for protectors grows. We unveil to you now the keys. We hope that with this symbol, you too will be a guardian of traditions, that you will believe in wonder and magic and keep it safe in your heart. Yes, I am now a guardian of the Haunted Mansion. So cute. Here, Dracula, you can be the guardian of the Haunted Mansion for me. Also, this model by Metal Earth, they make models where you can assemble like buildings and things, but this is the Disney edition model of the Haunted Mansion, so I can actually build a tiny little Haunted Mansion, which I've never built a model like this before, so I don't know if I'll be any good at it, but I'm excited to try it. And I can have a little Haunted Mansion right here next to me. And my fabulous fan with the Haunted Mansion wallpaper print for fanning myself in the hot spring months that are coming soon. Yeah, it's March now, isn't it? How is it March already this year? It's going. Soon the sun will be unavoidable. Well, all the more reason to stay inside and read vampire books.